Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, Mine Community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Jules Canonzo, who's the CEO of Fortuna Mining, who are a multi-listed Canadian-based precious metals mining company established back in 2005 with 5 operating mines and advanced exploration projects located across Argentina, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Mexico, Peru, and Senegal. Jules is an experienced geologist engineer by trade and has worked on many mineral exploration, mining and business development projects throughout Latin America, and has worked in senior level roles for private and public Canadian mining juniors company, obviously during his career. He co-founded Fortuna Mining Corp back in 2004, and he's going to share his journey and also obviously the company's journey since then. Give us an update on all the projects, how they contribute to local communities that they operate in, and what the future strategic direction of the company is. George, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
A pleasure to be here and speaking to you and your audience.
Yeah, thank you for your time. As we always start these podcasts off, just wondering if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself. As I mentioned, you are a geologist by trade, working across, obviously, Latin America. So I just wondering if you can just tell us a little bit about your career, how you got into mining, how your career's developed to what it is today.
First, I'm a Peruvian national, born and raised in a mining family. My family's been in the mining industry for 4 generations. I'm educated in the U.S. I'm, as you mentioned, a geological engineer with studies in mining engineering as well. And I co-founded Fortuna with 2 associates back in 2004. And we landed our first acquisition in 2005. And as we'll probably discuss through the program, it's been quite a journey for us.
Yeah. So, I wondered if you can just tell us a little bit about obviously Fortuna Mining, and obviously tell us about the journey that you've been on since back then, and how the company's progressed to what it is today.
You know, back in the day, at inception, Fortuna was 3 associates, very little money, and very large aspirations. Almost 20 years later, Fortuna is a company about to generate $1 billion in sales, operating across 2 continents, 6 countries, with over 5,000 people in the workforce, making Fortuna happen every day. A competent and diverse set of committed individuals that make the company happen every day, as I said, right? We have over $400 million liquidity available to the company. We are producing, in terms of gold equivalents, close to 500,000 ounces annually at the current rate. So, as I said at the beginning, it's been quite a journey, very rewarding. And I had the privilege to lead the charge all this year.
And when you started the company, did you have the vision to be as big as you were? And I suppose also when you were studying, when you were a geologist back in the day, was your vision and goal to become a CEO of a large mining company?
At a personal level, I've always been entrepreneurial. So if I was going to head in a direction, it was going to be that one of an entrepreneur. And with respect to Fortuna, we set out early on with big aspirations. And we've been working consciously to build a company that can create value for years to come, no? So always trying to balance that long-term vision with the short-term challenges that we face here in the industry. but always with that long-term vision. No, I believe mining companies, particularly today, have a broad set of responsibilities with not only our shareholders, but or stakeholders like the workforce, like our neighbors, host communities, host nations. So creating lasting value has been always top of mind through the process.
I wonder if you can just give us latest updates on some of your projects, and are you moving towards that vision that you're creating as a company?
Yes. Now, to tell you about where we are today and where we're heading, for those who are new to the Fortuna story, we have been anchored in Latin America for 16 years. And then in 2021, we expanded our business to West Africa. That was controversial back at the time because the market tends to focus or box companies as a Latin American producer or an African producer or an Australian producer, or even by commodities, right? A copper producer, a gold producer, silver producer. So we kind of broke the mold. We were perceived more as a company known for its Latin American expertise, and certainly that was true at the very beginning. We relied heavily on the founders of the company and their expertise. But back in 2021, we saw the opportunity to expand to a region that offers tremendous promise, which is West Africa. We made an acquisition of a business, Roxgold, which was a Canadian company with an operating mine in Burkina Faso and a most exciting development project at the time in Côte d'Ivoire. Since then, we did the acquisition. We have built the mine, and a mine that today it's on its first year of operations has become our flagship asset in the portfolio. It's the Séguéla mine in the Ivory Coast. So we have expanded our footprint in West Africa even further by an acquisition we did late last year, of an Australian junior company with also an exciting project in Senegal. It's the Diamba Sud project. So very quickly we have moved in our strategic vision and expanded our footprint in the West African region. And it has become, at least for the short, medium term, a pillar and driver for growth in the company, right? Our Latin America business is performing well, but short, medium term, I see the growth coming from West Africa.
And was there a reason why Fortuna sort of chose and focused on West Africa and obviously Latin America as opposed to other regions across North America?
Yes, in the early days, as I repeat, when we had no money and big aspirations, we had to rely heavily on the expertise and knowledge of the founders. No, we were leveraging our knowledge or networks. And myself, being a Peruvian national with deep connections in the mining industry, not only in Peru but in the region, a deep understanding of the region as well, we tried to leverage that. So early on, we decided to focus on Peru and Mexico, right? And sure enough, that's where we materialized our first acquisitions, the Caylloma mine in Peru and the San Jose project, which eventually became a very important mine in our. But then the company changed, things changed, and a strategy needed to change as well. Before expanding to West Africa, we did look at throughout the region first. So we needed a strong value proposition for us to change geographic focus. So believe me when I say that we looked at opportunities in Eastern Canada, Western Canada, Nevada, Arizona, Idaho, all through Mexico, Central America, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, Argentina. And every time we were looking at that, I had already become acquainted with West Africa back in 2015. And I was comparing the value propositions we were seeing emerge in West Africa versus what we were identifying throughout the Americas. And at the time, for the pool of things that were actionable for Fortuna, the better value proposition was consistently found in West Africa. Let me give you a fun fact. If we group, Rob, the gold producing regions of West Africa, which are basically in Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, in Western Mali. Mali is a big country, but the gold is produced in Western Mali. So if we loop around Western Mali, Guinea, Senegal, if we draw a contour around those small nations, that surface area is somewhat bigger than France and Belgium together, or the state of Texas in the US for your North American audience. The largest gold producing country in the world is China. It produces 370 metric tons of gold annually. And this region, which is the size of France and Belgium, produces 378. Those are World Gold Council estimates. So that small geographic region produces more gold than continental-sized China. And the second largest producing country in the world is Russia, then you have Australia, Canada, the US. All of those are continental-sized nations. And if we group the gold-producing regions of these small countries, it's a small area, the size of France and Belgium. And that small area produces more gold than any one of those continental-sized nations. So the mineral endowment, the capital efficiency to build mines, the growth that the region has exhibited is no secret. We're no pioneers. We're not a pioneer in West Africa. But still, the amount of opportunity that we see emerge is second to none. So that's what drove us there, right? Of course, it has its challenges, and we can discuss those. But the opportunity is clear. And for us, Rob, mining has always been a frontier business. So you must be willing to play in the frontier if you want to be in the mining business. And we are, by design, prepared to do that and meet those challenges.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting fact that you just gave, and I can understand why you did focus in West Africa based on those estimations and what you just saw there. What trends do you foresee shaping the mining industry over the next few years, and how is Fortuna positioned to adapt to these changes?
Well, a sweeping change over the last, I'll say, 10 years or the last decade has been just this general awareness of society with respect to the concept of environmental and social care and governance from companies. And I believe right now we're seeing a bit of a backlash with the acronym of ESG and sustainability. I think there is a big debate because I think society just jumped into that pool without really understanding a lot of the things that we were getting into, right? Or some of the commitments that we were making as a society, right? But certainly this higher awareness and higher expectations from society, particularly on extractive industries, has been a sweeping change. And at Fortuna, we've been very eager to listen and meet those standards, right? I don't believe the mining industry should, flag itself for not doing things right or anything like that. There's always room for improvement everywhere. But we as an industry have been doing a lot of right things for many years, perhaps not being the communicating best, right? So enhanced transparent communication has been key. More stringent standards that the industry as a whole, mining companies within the sector have largely adopted. For example, the global industry standard for tailings management. It's an initiative that has been pushed strongly by the Church of England, and today is a standard for the management of critical infrastructure that most mining companies have adopted. Cyanide code, and just how we communicate and manage critical aspects of the business. I think that's been an important change. I don't believe that's going to go away. And for us, through the journey of understanding and listening, we come to the conclusion that what's important, because the concept of sustainability is so broad and overarching to every activity, or every human activity really, that for us what's key is to do deep and very critical materiality assessments. And through those materiality assessments, identify what really is impactful for our business, for key stakeholders, and really focus our efforts and resources on those particular aspects, like tailings management, water, safety of our workforce, things like that.
Yeah. And I suppose moving on from that, what ways do Fortuna contribute to obviously social and economic development of the communities where you operate in?
Mining companies have always been quite engaged with local communities. For example, last year, or community relations or investment in neighboring communities amounted to about $8 million, right? Through different initiatives, because we work in 6 different countries, and we listen and then work collaboratively with our host communities in helping them achieve their development plans. They usually center around infrastructure, education, health, and sustainable economic development, right? Those end up being the 4 main areas of focus. Going beyond that, we initiated last year a program in the Ivory Coast we're very proud of. It's called the National Partnership Program, because mining companies traditionally work within their area of influence, of direct influence. And now we are partnering with the government of Cote d'Ivoire and doing programs at a national level. Our initial program has been on cataracts, helping get a proper diagnosis, and with a simple operation, you can bring a person's eyesight back. And this is, of course, geared towards disadvantaged regions and parts of the population that are quite disadvantaged. So we have had over 1,000 medical interventions in this program, working jointly with the government of Cote d'Ivoire. So we do all sorts of things, and particularly because we worked in areas. Mines are usually, as you know, remote, and in areas that are very delicate from social and environmental perspective, but need a lot of engagement and resources. And we as miners are the ones who usually get there, right? Sometimes before even the state does, right? So that's a responsibility we take very serious.
Yeah. And how does the company engage with obviously community, with the local communities, and obviously working with local and national governments, and bearing in mind that you are in Latin America and also Africa? And is there any similarities or differences between, I suppose, the 2 continents in the way that you engage with local communities and also the governments?
Every place will have its own particularities, but the approach is very similar. Very simple. It has to be honest, respectful. It has to be constant, right? And the concept of us being a host who wants to integrate, right, as a community member, right? We are a guest with our hosts who wants to integrate as a community member, right? We ourselves as a partner in helping them. We have resources. They have historic knowledge of the area and whatnot, right? So working together on many fronts. For us, something I am proud of, and it has to do with engagement. For example, sometimes we say, yeah, my company say we will go to remote areas and we give employment, and that should be well understood and valued by everybody. It's not just about employment. When we go to these remote areas where the state many times doesn't have the capability of provide a proper education to the young and proper opportunities, where people need to migrate to urban centers, and that migration without resources, without knowledge, without skills is a human tragedy. There are human tragedies every day attached to those migrations of disadvantaged population to urban centers, be it in Latin America or Africa. So to be able to get there and work with them, not only in giving them low-skilled jobs like sweeping, no, it's not about that. We train people, right, to do so they can gain skills that then they can take anywhere in the world. And we have good examples of that, right? For example, large truck operators, no, or large truck operators don't come from other places. We train them. We use top of the line technology, simulators. You see some of the simulators for large trucks that you could be, that are similar to some of the ones you find for training pilots, right? So we train locals on them and help them gain new skills, and then they can take with them wherever they go, right? So that's part of engagement, right? And recognizing that we're a guest who is trying to integrate. With governments, we recognize that what we have is a concession, but it is their asset. We are given the right to exploit, to extract for the greater benefit of society, but it is their asset. So that also, when you reason it like that, gives you a whole different sense of responsibility and in how you engage with the nation that's giving you their national treasures for you to extract for the greater benefit of society. So all of that is how you engage, right? How do we engage? We engage respectfully, right? We're giving a concession to study and eventually extract a good that's a part of the nation, right? And how do we do that? Very respectful.
Yeah. Following on from what you've just said, I suppose it comes down, and I suppose with what as the mining industry and what you've just said in terms of how mining companies go into various countries around the world, often developing countries, and create obviously value. And I suppose mining as a brand doesn't put that across. And obviously I interview a lot of people on these podcasts and occasionally ask them about obviously how can we improve the branding of the brand of mining. You've obviously demonstrated just there what mining actually does for local communities. How would you like the mining industry to better the brand of mining across the globe? Obviously showcasing what we actually do, not just extract resources from the ground, but working with local communities. How can you see our industry developing a better brand than it has, and not be seen as a dirty, unnecessary industry?
We've been asking ourselves that question for many, many, many years as an industry, right? And I think there is always, I would say, many efforts. Perhaps what we have to do is a more concerted effort from one of the industry uh, chambers, right? ICMM or one of those where we or the World Gold Council. It's funny because I seen Leonardo DiCaprio marching against a copper mine in Panama, and I'm sure the guy drives an EV, right? So where do an electric vehicle requires, outside of the lithium and all of that, 85 kilograms of copper per vehicle on average. An internal combustion vehicle requires 25 kilos. So if things stay equal and the world continues developing at the rate it's developing, just that transition on the side of the combustion to electric requires that we open every year. Every 2 years, we open 3 world-class copper mines. Mines that traditionally take 20, 30 years to develop, right? From time to exploration, studies, and whatnot, at least in production, it can take 20 years, no? So you need to open 3 of those every year so Leonardo can continue driving and replace his electric vehicle. So, there is a disconnect. That's why I started saying when we think about the commitments that society has made with respect to a higher level of care for the environment, climate change, we have not really sat and really reasoned what all that means. And we play a critical role in supplying those key metals that are going to drive a better world. And in the case of gold, today we're seeing who's buying gold. Who's buying gold? It's the central banks of the world who have been buying gold for the past couple of years, driving the price higher. Why? Because historically it has been used not only as a store of value, but bringing stability to society. Homus economicus. So where does that come from? Someone has to dig it out of the ground responsibly. Responsible mining. That's the key.
Yeah, certainly. Obviously, you mentioned, I think here earlier in your introduction, obviously operating in West Africa, and obviously it comes with his obviously unique challenges. What kind of challenges have you faced as a company? I suppose in particular due to the rise of resource nationalism, and how are you navigating these complexities?
Yes, in West Africa today, a theme is security, for example. We know that Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger have a contested security situation, a humanitarian crisis, political instability. So when we talk about West Africa, at Fortuna, we make a particular differentiation between more the inland countries, the ones I just mentioned, and more the coastal countries where we find more stability, like Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Senegal, Guinea. So we do find a difference there today. But having said that, I think the political instability in these emerging democracies, developing economies, frontier nations really is a reality. But what's well documented is that in spite of all of these challenges, these are nations that do value responsible mining, right? So you might have an eventual coup in one of these countries or friction around the election time or whatever. But there is always interest on the part of all of these governments in the expansion of their mining industry. And that's well documented. Now, what we have today is a more of a sweeping attitude across the region to varying degrees depending in what country you are with respect to this sense of natural resource nationalism, let's call it, or more emphasis on local content. Remember that a lot of these nations, Rob, have been given very generous tax breaks over the last 2 decades to investment in their countries through mining conventions and other tax benefits. Now, after 20 years, the region has established itself as the largest gold producing region in the world, as we discussed at the beginning of the program. So I think it makes sense for these countries to say, okay, I've been giving incentives for 2 decades. Now the industry has grown. We're a meaningful producer. Perhaps why should we continue giving tax breaks? And then to me, that's a fair discussion. That's a fair analysis that these countries have to take. And the outcome of that might be we should not continue giving tax breaks to the mining industry, right? And I don't see that as a cataclysmic change or shift. It's just part of a natural process. They wanted to incentivize investment in mining 20 years ago. They gave the tax breaks. Mining expanded enormously. And now they're asking themselves if they should continue giving tax breaks or they want to take a bit more. Then we have to enter into a dialogue where do you see that curve between taking too much and impacting investment and not? And that's a dialogue that is ongoing in many of these countries right now. And I see that as a fair dialogue. It makes sense to me.
Yeah. As the CEO, what are some of the, I suppose, key lessons that you've learned from leading mining projects both in West Africa and in Latin America? And what advice would you offer any other companies planning to work and mine in any of those regions where you operate?
Yes, outside of try to keep your mistakes small because you make a lot of those. I would say that in this industry, the quality of the asset is key, right? So having that keen eye and seize the opportunity to get your hands on good assets, right? That is easier said than that, right? But as a concept, what turns lasting companies are the ones that were able to land that discovery or that acquisition of a pivotal asset, right? So that's important. And second is people. This is a complex business that it's multidisciplinary and complex. So surround yourself with the best people you can, right? I work with a diverse team of senior executives. Every time I need to bring someone new, I first want someone who knows about the specific field more than I do, right? So putting together these motivated teams, high performance teams, is it's not just mining, it's not just administration and finance, it's not just exploration, it's not just managing complex, political relations, relations at the local level with local stakeholders on the community side. You need good, diverse team of people, particularly working across continents, different countries, regions. That diversity, all different points of views is important. So, quality of asset and quality of people. No, to keep it simple. No, I can talk about that for hours. But yeah, the horse and the jockey.
Yeah. We can save that till next time when we do another podcast. And lastly, I wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about obviously the medium to long term vision of Fortuna Mining as you see it from today.
We are between 400,000 and half a million ounces of gold equivalent production annually. Today, gold accounts for roughly 85% of revenue for us. This year, we are producing at a tune of $1 billion in sales, or a little over $1 billion in sales. And 85% of that is gold, 10% silver, and the balance is a bit of lead and zinc pipe. So we're not pursuing the proverbial million ounces of production right now. What we want to do is consolidate or 500,000 ounces with two key attributes. One is cost. As we have no pricing power in this industry, the best defense we have is be able to produce at or below the global mining industry average for cost, which currently travels around $1,500 per ounce. That's from the all-in sustaining cost perspective. So 500,000 ounces a year with very competitive cost at or below the industry average. And the other attribute is the life of assets. So we're pushing our exploration, our business development initiatives, so we can consolidate a portfolio where all our mines can show a decade plus in reserves.
George, thank you for your time. Appreciate you give us an overview and history of Fortuna Mining, but telling us obviously about the different jurisdictions that you're working in, some of the challenges that you face as a company, and obviously your ESG and community liaisons that you're involved with, and obviously helping local communities where you operate. If our audience wants to reach out and to you, follow the Fortuna story and get regular updates, how can they go about doing that? What social media platform channels does the company operate on?
The first one will be our website, right? fortunamining.com, and we have an active Twitter X account, and I think the company is in LinkedIn as well. The social networks, but the first point I'll invite you to visit to get a bit more knowledgeable on the company is our website, as I said, fortunamining.com.
Yeah, we'll include those in the show notes accompanying this episode for our listeners to reach out and follow the story. Again, thank you for your time. Hopefully you can come on the podcast sometime later next year and give us an update on the company.
I'll be pleased to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, George. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. As always, appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing these episodes far and wide. Obviously, share the episode across Latin America, across North America, across Africa, across Europe, everywhere around the world, to people within the company, to people that you know in the mining industry, but also share this episode to people outside of our mining industry. The only way that we're going to improve the brand and image of our industry, and I suppose let people outside of mining really understand what mining is about and what the industry brings to local communities and brings to the world. We can only do that by sharing education, sharing this content. So thank you for your time. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes, and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.